Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself.
Check it.
Let me ask you this question.
Do you understand? That's the point that I'm making.
I ask a lot of Moors this question, but now I stand here before the master teacher of history of dealing with the ancient Moors. During the time of ancient Kemet, where was the Moors at that time?
This is what people don't understand. What is known as ancient Kemet, which is Kemet, is the capital empire of the Moorish Empire. That's what you need to know. We're one and the same people. Our concepts are wrong because we keep dividing ourselves against each other as if we're different people. We are absolutely the same people. This is where the problem comes in, Sinetta. Many people do not understand the function of the social engineering that the European did. So when they look at black, they're looking at black from a perspective of identity, right? They're looking at it from a perspective of identity. When the European calls us black, he's using it from an engineering perspective for classification purposes. And if our people would understand that much, because it is a fact, improvable fact, then they would look at it different. Whereas, like, for instance, like, you'll find a lot of Asiatics when you're talking to them, you're saying you're not black, they're looking from the perspective like you're trying to take their identity from them. You're looking at it from the fact that it's an engineering word. And so because we're looking at it from two different perspectives, it appears to be a clash. Now, a scholar, you can reason with a scholar because you can tell a scholar, so go to the etymology and then the debate is over. But you tell a person that just deals with beliefs, they're going to argue with you all night because they don't even know where you're coming from because they don't have an education. While admitting that we've been miseducated. That's what the problem is, trying to get an uneducated people to respect education. And they're debating with what they believe against facts, which is you're trying to get them away from that venue. And they're fighting you because they're looking at, you know, I'm a man, you're a man, my opinion, your opinion. And believe me, if we don't reduce that amongst our people, we're shot, we're done. Because our people lack education. And and this is key. Every Asiatic, and this is, I'm glad that you placed the issue of Kemet, because this is one of the greater problems with the Asiatics of the North, is that when we go into Asiatic history and African history, we have been trained to hone in just like a tunnel vision right to Kemet. Wrong concept. When you study African history, if you're not studying world history, you're not studying African history.
That's right.
That is how the European has disconnected us from power, because the concept, we keep looking at concept of root. When I say concept of root, where the root is, as if it didn't spread, if it went nowhere else. And so therefore the Asiatics don't relate to the plateaus in Yucatan. Even some of the pyramids, which are older than the pyramids in Giza, they don't relate to that it's their own, because their concept is our relationship here in the North is only from European diaspora, which is a fraud. We was always here.
That's right.
And then pyramids along the Mississippi that are thousands of years old and much older than the pyramids in Giza. These Asiatics was here just like they was there. And if any Asiatic really wants to understand how to bring our people together, what we need to do, honestly, is get rid of some of our own ancient hatreds and start looking at history for what it really is, and start recognizing that the only reason why these Europeans are ruling here is because of the Renaissance. And the culture of the Renaissance is codified in Masonry.
That's right.
And the Moors brought that Renaissance to Europe.
Yes.
And that's why the Constitution, that's how that Constitution that is governing now has a relationship to our people and to Kemet that they don't even look at from that perspective. They keep looking at the power here as something totally separate from Kemet. That's where we make our mistake.
Right.
When you stand in here, think Africa. When you look at the power that runs the world, look at Africa. When you think of those big rulers that's going to and fro the earth, devouring the nations, understand the power of government from Kemet.
Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself.
Check it. Tricks. Now,
So now it separates the adjective from the noun. You see that? See, black or more. Any dark-skinned person, especially an African Negro, earlier black, small case, then more, and see how the black is all case, which means a straw, and is separated from more, which is a capital letter. There's the identification of these people who think they're black, right in the dictionary. See that? Mm-hmm. Spell it.
M-O-O-R.
All right. See how simple it is to educate children? So welcome to class, Moors. All right? Are we clear? It's in the dictionary, isn't it? It doesn't even take a scholar, does it? It just takes somebody to read it, doesn't it? Thank you very much. Give them a hand, y'all. So now we're going to talk about your lost estate. All right. And give him a mic, too, in a minute. See this December the 1st, 1789? He's been in office about 7 months. He was appointed. He was not elected. He was appointed April the 30th of that same year. Keep in mind, this is the same year, 1789, when the Sundry Free Moors Act was before the House of Representatives, which we'll go into too, to connect you. Are we clear? And this is to show you, for those naysayers and the COINTELPRO operatives that try to make these people think that Drew Ali made this stuff up. He's delivering you, bringing you back your name, your nationality, and the knowledge of your lost estate, and a consciousness so that you can reclaim it, so you can stop this stupid Negro colored suffering that you don't have to be doing. You're suffering because you're in dishonor. Because you have no estate if you dishonor your mothers and your fathers. You cannot transact business in another man's name and then talk about property. It ain't going to happen. You're 3/5 person. You can't do somebody's name and nationality and talk about you got property or inheritance. I mean, don't get angry, get smart. I mean, yeah, they really trying to take advantage of you, but you don't have to be dumb. Because the information is out there. Even though they've burned books for generations, there's enough information that free anybody that wants to be free. And don't think that scholars don't know this information, but this doesn't feed the black agenda, so they ain't going to reveal it. Do you understand? All right, so let's read this, and I want the children to pay particular attention. And I want you to also recognize why you're not going to find information like this in your school books. Why? Because it will liberate you. Because it puts everything back into context. And it starts to show you who's who. George Washington, and for those scholars who would dispute it, there's your reference from Documents of American History. So don't think the scholars don't know this stuff. They just ain't talking. Letter from George Washington to Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Sultan of Morocco, city of New York, December the 1st, 1789. And he's wearing his Masonic garb, standing on the floor of a Sar set. Those black and white tiles represent a Sar and a Set, the upper world, the lower world. Are we clear? All right. And the G stands for geometry. And these, that compass and the square, is referred to in the Bible as the carpenter's tools. And Jesus was a carpenter. You understand? Good. All right. All right. Now, anyway. Great and magnanimous friend, since the date of the letter which the late Congress, by their president, first sentence let you know that he wasn't the first president, you see? From his own letter. So you see why information like this is dangerous to be exposed to the common people who have been miseducated, who think Georgie was the first president when he was the 9th? Because if they gave you the other history, it begins to tie you back. And the leader guys don't want you to have that information because they can't play the black game and start marching and praying. And they're asking you for $5. Oh, make it 10, Jesus is half. You know, that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I want you to pay attention to this, but when we get into it, I want you to look what is obvious to you, and so that we can get down to some of the politics. And don't forget your question, brother. I ain't forget you. All right? All right. Yeah. Since the date of the letter which the late Congress by their president addressed your Imperial Majesty, the United States of America, have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. So you can understand the Constitution didn't come from them, did it? It was adopted by them. Now you understand what Obama was saying when he tell you that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law? I'm going to go on to Article 11 of the Treaty of Tripoli from the Treaty of Peace and Friendship that Obama read to the world and show you what he was reading and show you how it went over people's heads. And he's telling you. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task and the disarrangements occasioned by so great though peaceable a revolution will apologize and account for your majesties not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. The United States having unanimously appointed me to supreme executive authority in this nation, you see he was appointed. Now later on you're going to find out why. Your Majesty's letter of August 17, 1788, so this is 2 years before he was appointed. He's talking about correspondences that were going on. How come you ain't getting this in school? Because they don't want you to know that you're standing on Morocco, that the land is Morocco, the occupational government is the United States, distinguished from the land. It's a foreign religious corporation belonging to the Jesuits. You're under occupation. And you're referred to as the Great Masonic Secret. And Mason means mother and son. Aset and Horus, or what they call Isis and Horus, or like they say in the church, Jesus and Mary, mother and son, and the study of Masonry, Masonry. That's what Masonry is. It's more science. Anyway, so the United States having unanimously appointed me the supreme executive authority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August the 17th, 1788, this was 2 years before the appointment, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government already exists, remain unanswered and has been delivered to me. I have also received the letters which your Imperial Majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashars of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. So you see that Marine song? That's one they taught from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. They conquered you. You get the point? All right. Now, we greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies, and so you must know that the regencies are the orders or the territorial orders of the Moors, from which they have designed your township, your boroughs, your counties, etc. The Moorish Science Temples of America are actually regencies. They're not only for ministerial work, they're also for national work. And you're supposed to be prepared to take your places amongst the affairs of men via the study of international law enforcement. The rest of the nations have already declared a recognition of you. Why are not you helping in this work? Except that you've been misguided by some people. So we're going to set this stuff straight so that you can comprehend this for yourself. Are we clear? All right, so we greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies toward this nation who have never injured them is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with. As you can see, they couldn't keep up with the taxes. Now you're beginning to understand the Al-Moroccan Revolution on another level, the American Revolution. The Al-Moroccan Revolution. Got to know. Now you understand why when you go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, you see all those statues got turbans and fezzes on? The Europeans tell them in school, oh, they're Frenchmen. And the Asiatics say, oh, all right. And statues got turbans and fezzes on. Biggest day. Gettysburg Address. I'm telling our people, they can't pay. You know, things are in their face and they like, lunch. And within our territories, there are no mines whether of gold or silver. And this young nation, just recovering from the waste and dissolution of a long war, have not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce. But our soil is bountiful. Pay attention to this, you all. Take notes, take notes, take notes, take notes. Now you want to see why all of your leader guys must be Masons and why they got a Moorish fez in secret. Now look at this. We have not yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce, but our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. Pay attention to this paragraph. The encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions. Where do you think you're standing? Moorish dominions. See why they don't give you real history? Why they reconstructed the history? Reconstruction? They weren't building, they're reconstructing history. So the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor make a deep impression on the United States and confirm, pay attention, their respect for and attachment to your imperial majesty. The United States is an appendage of the Moroccan Empire. Now you understand in your divine constitution, bylaws, and Drali said you're part and parcel of this said government must live the life accordingly. Now you understand why Obama told you that this constitution comes from Muslim law? And this is not a Christian country? And our people think it's absolutely the opposite with their miseducation and promoted by a lot of their black leaders who are paid off because they know this information, but this will kill that diaspora because you was already here. And this ain't India, and we ain't Indians. Anyway, it gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity.
Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself the question. Ask yourself.
Check it.
Right? And the frequency today is going to be very high energy because, you know, when there's repetitive slander and people are telling you, you know, you should just humble, leave it alone, don't worry about it or whatever, you know what I mean? And the slander still continues even though you're trying to humble and cool yourself or whatever. You know, sometimes you have to draw scimitars. So we're drawing scimitars on all you black agents out there today that like to call us black Indians and like to say that there's a black Wall Street. Crap. Don't listen to none of those agents. Anybody that comes to you talking to you about black Indians, don't listen to them. Anybody come and tell you about black history, don't listen to them. Anybody coming to tell you about black anything, discard what they're saying and go back to Noble Drew Ali and what he said, that you're not Negro, black, colored, you're Moors, right? So we already know the definition of black, so we're not even going to go there. We already know black means pale, so all these pale people, pale history people, pale Indians, pale Wall Street and all that, throw that out the window because that has nothing to do with us, right? Indian, inhabitant of India or South Asia, applied to the native inhabitants of the Americas from at least 1553 on the mistaken notion that America was the eastern end of Asia, right? So the only reason these people are called Indian is by mistake, and if it's a mistake, that means it's not real. So throw that out the window and get that out the way. So forget the Indian crap, forget the black crap, right?
I think you realize that the reason why they continue that on is to help propagate the falsehood behind this, right? Because if they're then calling the Indian the indigenous to here, and he has no claim to here, then they can make themselves just as much
the claimant.
The claimant,
exactly,
right? Because
and
what they've done is they've taken out the true heir to the land,
exactly,
and made someone else the claimant. So you would have to then wade through that garbage first,
right? So black and Indian are misnomers that were placed on the Moors, because there's no all these you know, in Tonto and all that stuff, you know, Brave Star and all that. That's not, they're no Indians. They're not no indigenous people to this landmass, right? They're not indigenous to this landmass, right? Next definition, slave, etymology again, right? Slave, S-L-A-V-E, Indian tribe of northwestern Canada, 1789, from slave, noun, translating Cree Algonquin, Awakan, captive or slave, right? So when they say, now this is how dumb, this is how stupid, this is how ignorant so-called Negro, black, colored people are, right? They say that they're slaves from Africa, right? Slave is an Indian tribe of northwestern Canada. So if a slave is an Indian tribe of northwestern Canada, right? Algonquian, right? And we know that Algonquin and the Iroquois are two federations of Moors making up Cree, Ojibwe, Cherokee, blah blah blah, going down the line, Seminole, whatever, right? Algonquin and Iroquois are confederations. Those aren't tribes of Indians. Those are confederations of Indians, right? A slave is an Indian tribe of northwestern Canada. Now you know why Harriet Tubman said follow the North Star and come to Canada to escape so-called slavery, because she was technically saying you're Indian, go back home. That was the message. But they didn't get the message. They want to play black games, and they want to keep, you know, making this fraud, right? So then people are going to be posting up crap like this, right? Name the country built on the genocide of one race and the enslavement of another, and then they show you this picture, right? Right? Black people, ignorant black people, showing a brother and then showing an Indian half and half, and saying that one of them got enslaved and then one of them got wiped out, when both of them are still here today. And you can see that they're still here in us, because we're the Indian and we're the so-called slave, because they're one and the same people. Think about this picture. The native of this land and the slave that came from Africa are one and the same people, right? And we're going to prove that today, that there's not no separation between the so-called Aboriginal people, indigenous people of the land, and the so-called Negro Africans, slaves that came over here on slave ships that never existed, right? Colonial America. The earliest record of African and Native American contact occurred in April 1502, when the first enslaved African arrived in Hispaniola. Some escaped inland on Santo Domingo. Those who survived and joined with the natives became the first circle of black Native Americans. Right? There's the fraud again. Every time you read your history and you see black attached to anything, throw it in the garbage and identify yourself as who you are, Moors. Because as soon as you attach black or Indian, like we said earlier, those two are misnomers. So as soon as you see black and Indian, you already know that that's a fraud. Get rid of it.
What they're doing is taking your nationality away
right?
from you.
They're denationalizing you. And they're denationalizing you through your consent, because you think you're black Indians, because you're listening to this idiot. What's the guy's name? The guy out there who did the testing on all the black people to see if, you know, who has the genes of indigenous people and who has the genes of whatever, and then, right?
Compton or something?
I can't remember.
He was in the class we talked
Sellout Negro, right? All these Negroes denationalizing you, and then we're upholding these Negroes that's denationalizing us, right? Not knowing that denationalization is an international war crime, and these people are supposed to get put on a wall and get stoned to death for denationalization. But we don't want to do that. We want to be friends with sellouts. We want to be friends with agents, right? It's not about being friends with agents, because nobody really told you that your own brother is going to sell you into slavery. Be careful. right? In June of that year, in addition, the first example of African slaves escaping from European colonists and being absorbed by Native Americans was recorded in 1526. Now, why are Native Americans, so-called, gonna see a runaway slave and absorb them into native tribes if those people didn't look just like the natives? Right? Like, it's common sense. Why? You think these people are just gonna see, you know, like, and again, it comes back to our concept. Our concept is natives are red people, or the people that we see around there today. And just like when we talk about, you know, well, how did we get in this land first if we didn't come over here on slave ships? How about there was no Atlantic Ocean? That's how we got in this land first, because we just walked over here, just like Queen of Sheba had her caravan or whatever and came over here because the land was one landmass, right?
Or even if you go back far enough, you realize that we were the first navigators, so we were
still coming over here on our own ships and on our own, right? Well before anything called slavery, right? That's why Alim Bey made the comment that, yeah, we come from Africa, but it wasn't no 400 years ago.
That's right.
We came from Africa tens of thousands of years ago. We were coming over here into this landmass, right? In South Carolina, colonists were so concerned about the possible threat posed by the mixed African and Native American population that was arising due to runaways that they passed a new law in 1725. This law stipulated a fine of 200 pounds for persons bringing a slave to the foreign frontier regions. In 1751, South Carolina passed a law against holding Africans in proximity to Native Americans. So why are they gonna, now think about this, right? They're gonna pass a law saying that it's against the law to keep Africans, right,
near
so-called Native Americans. Why are they doing this? They're doing this just because they're bored? They're doing this because they're trying to separate slaves from escaping the plantation? No, they're doing this to denationalize the people, to get the people not knowing who their brothers and sisters are, to get the people thinking that they're separate when they're the same people, one and the same. When we're talking about 1751, 1725, 1622, 1526, be clear, be very, 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 very absolutely clear in your mind that the image of Native Americans, so-called, during that time looked just like me, just like Noble Drew Ali, just like you. There was no so-called red man during those times. He wasn't even on the planet yet. The red man is new. That's a new amalgamation of more on the planet. They are very new, right? They maybe have 200 years on the planet. They're younger than the European, because everybody that was considered native, aboriginal, indigenous before the 1700s was dark-skinned, big-nosed, big-lip people, right? In 1763, during Chief Pontiac's uprising, right? And then keep in mind, right? They always want to say that they killed the Indians and they got all the Indians out the way or whatever, but then they use the Indian name still, right? Right? Chief Pontiac. Pontiac's a car. Pontiac's name on a car. Okay, Pontiac's an indigenous word. How's a car company going to use an indigenous word? Oh, well, they are in the Americas, right? That is a corporation from this hemisphere. So the name that they have to use is going to have to be Aboriginal. In order for them to have the power to do what they do. They can't do anything under European names over here.
Of course not. Because then the fraud will be exposed.
Because the fraud's going to be exposed.
So what they've done is they've then they've implemented another foreign race, or another foreign sect into this jurisdiction, pretended that they're the ones whose land it was, and then using our original indigenous names and placed it on them,
Right.
and then taking ownership of that. They've taken ownership of that because that was their fraud that they built anyway.
From the beginning.
From the beginning,
Right.
But using our names,
We're using our names
because
instead.
they have to use that still,
Right.
because that's the tie to the land.
Right. No different than the corporation of, the corporation of Canada. Canada is an indigenous name,
That's right.
right? Even pre-Canada names are indigenous names. Canadigua, Cananta, right?
Right.
All these names are indigenous names.
Right.
Toronto is an indigenous name.
The thing is that the fraud would be that much more quickly exposed if they were using, let's say, they were saying it was Italy
Italy or
France.
You would automatically know that. Hold on a second. Why is there Italy in
That's right.
Canada?
That's right.
You know?
And that's the same.
Why is there a Greece in Canada?
That's what the same goes for all the names
Right.
as well.
Right. And then when you check the pattern, you go check the exotic map of the United States of America that's in King Alfred Plan, and you see Egypt on there, and Morocco,
and Mecca,
and Mecca, and all these names over here.
Tripoli,
Right?
Tunisia.
Tripoli, Tunisia. Like, so why are those so-called names said to be, well, those are African names, but they're over here? What are those names doing over here? If not that those continents were one landmass at one time, so obviously the places are going to have the same names. That's why there's pyramids here, and there's pyramids in China, and there's pyramids in the south, and not just on the continent, because this land has always been inhabited by dark-skinned people who are the founders of civilization, and the founders of civilization always leave their mark, hands down. You're not gonna go somewhere, right?
Well, civilization, I think, speaks to the fact that they have created something, in
Right.
a sense, right?
Right.
They have made something. That's what civilization, I think, denotes to begin with, right? So there would have to be proof of them, right?
Right. Okay. So in 1763, during Chief Pontiac's uprising, a Detroit resident reported that Native Americans killed whites, but were saving and caressing all the Negroes they take. Right? He worried lest that might produce an insurrection. Chief Joseph Brant, Mohawk in New York, welcomed runaway slaves and encouraged adoption of them into tribes and intermarriage. Keep in mind, Joseph Brant, he sold out later. He might have been doing that in New York, but by the time Joseph Brant came to Canada, he had slaves. That's in Canadian history. Now go research Joseph Brant, JOSEPH BRNT, and then, also ask yourself the question, why is the chief of a Mohawk tribe named Brant? Obviously, you sold out. Where's your indigenous name? Right, and remember, and again, he was down with all these so-called first prime ministers of Upper Canada and Lower Canada that had slaves and all that. He was down with them, right? He was definitely down with them, right? The Native American adoption systems knew no color line. Carter G. Woodson's notion of an escape hatch from slavery proved correct. Native American villages welcomed fugitive slaves, and some served as stations on the Underground Railroad. Native American villages welcomed fugitive slaves, and some served as stations on the Underground Railroad.
So they're right there.
Right? Stations. Why? Because Harriet Tubman's mom was free. Harriet Tubman's mom was free, which means she was indigenous, aboriginal and indigenous to the land. Never came over here on a slave ship or nothing like that. Right? During the transitional period of Africans becoming the primary race enslaved, so, right, during the transitional period of Africans becoming the primary race enslaved, so that means they weren't always the enslaved people, right? Somebody was enslaved before them, right? This is what, how come they don't talk about this during Black History Month? That there were slaves before the African people were slaves.
Exactly.
Right? Native Americans were sometimes enslaved at the same time. So if Africans weren't the first enslaved people, and Native Americans were enslaved at the same time as Africans, that means the whole story of Africans being enslaved come from the fact that they slaved the Native people.
Of course, it's connecting the two.
It's connecting the two, right? Africans and Native Americans worked together, lived together in communal quarters, produced collective recipes for food, and shared herbal remedies, myths, and legend. Some intermarried, some had mixed-race children. Ads asked for the return of both African American and Native American slaves. Some Native Americans resented the presence of Africans. In one description, the Katawabi tribe in 1752 showed great anger and bitter resentment when an African American came among them as a trader. Now, why is African American coming to trade, right, with Native tribes?
We're in amongst them, right?
And amongst them, if he's not Native himself. Why? What? If he's a slave that came from Africa, what the hell you trading? What you got? You don't have anything if you're a slave that came from Africa that you're gonna go trade with some Catawba tribe.
That must have been one of those
Right?
wars, eh?
And again, Catawba tribe, that's 1752, right? And this is how they play that detach game,
Right.
right? To give the appearance that, you know, there was hatred between the Native Americans and the Africans or whatever. That's infighting. That's not no big deal. Everybody has infighting.
Yeah.
Europeans infight.
Yeah.
Asians infight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that shows it right there that they were just pissed off that some dude from was here.
So-called Africa
That's
was
right.
coming to trade with them, right? Right?
Funny that they also attach American to him as well,
Exactly.
right? Because it could have just been an African.
Like, yeah, right.
Right.
Or he could have just been American,
Well, that's right.
right?
Or more important, he probably
Right.
was just American.
Or just American, because that's the other thing that, you know,
And that's another question. How did he get here then?
right, and also too, right, again, coming back to the whole fraud and understanding when people are running a fraud on you, it's so easy to recognize. Just like when somebody says black Egyptian, black people from Kemet, right? You're taking a word that didn't exist in a time frame and putting it in the time frame.
That's right.
African American came about with
Just
Jesse Jackson.
That's right. So right there, you can tell that someone's trying to implement putting a title
making
onto someone.
Yeah, making this denationalized name, African American, this denationalizing term,
That's right.
retroactive by applying it to a time frame of 1752.
Right. Taking a story and then applying a denationalized name to that.
To that, when that name didn't exist during that time. During 1752, there was no such thing as African Americans. That term didn't even exist.
You know, you then have to question what they're talking about with that tribe too, right?
Right, but again, Negro black color people don't play detective. They just go with everything that's said, and that's what it is, and they just go with it, right? So let's go see some of these so-called black Indians, as they call them, right? So everybody's seen this picture, right? This is probably one of the most famous quote-unquote black Indian pictures, right? Okay, well let's read about her and see if she's black, right? Diane Fletcher, right? Diane's father was born in Virginia. He was born in Virginia.
And his father was born in Virginia.
His parents were born in Africa and brought to America as
What
slaves.
year was that? Does it say? Or no?
No, it doesn't say.
Diane's father was born in Virginia.
Yeah, I think it's like, this is like 18 something.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Dan's father was born in Virginia.
Right.
His parents were born in Africa and brought to America as slaves. While still a young child, he was sold to a man who lived in Florida. He ran away and lived with the Seminole Indians. This is her father.
Okay.
Right? He ran away and lived with the Seminole Indians. Though still a slave, right?
Though still
a slave, so he ran away.
Right.
But then they're saying he's a slave.
Right.
Right? So though still a slave, they treated him better than his former master, the Seminoles.
Huh.
Right? This is her father.
Well, it's interesting that they're still trying to apply a slave
A
mentality,
slave mentality
to a free man.
Right. Okay? He married a Seminole woman.
Which seems to sort of then beget the question, how could he be a slave and marry
a Seminole woman? Right? Why would they let a slave come into the tribe and marry
one of their free
people? Right? Because if they have children, the child will be free.
Right. Okay.
Because the heritage
falls through the mother.
Comes through the mother.
Right.
And when you look at all these stories of these so-called black Indians, their mom is the indigenous one.
Right.
And their dad is the African that came from the slavery, that came and got adopted into the tribe. Right? And this goes back to, this is how we know that Noble Drew Ali was teaching us indigenous customs. Because he himself even said that he came for the young and unborn. Right? He himself was holding a sister on the 101 cover. Because everything comes through the women. Heritage has H-E-R. Nationality has to do with nature, which is a mother.
First of all, nations start with women. Yeah. That's number one, coming from her womb. Mm-hmm. She is the one who creates nations. So there's a bunch of some brothers, sons somewhere talking about they started a nation. That's corporate. That's fictitious. In fact, this whole thing about nationality wouldn't even be a thing if it wasn't for the fact that people respected and honored their mothers and fathers from the first place. Because one mother's breast had given us all suck.
Jazzy kinda brother. And when I like something, I go after it. Met him at the age of 15, really, I mean, it was love at first sight as he held the mic. Passion in his eyes and his lyrics tight. A real man of his word. Beauty behold after the first and the second and the third night. Wanna listen to him serenade me till the daylight. Cause his flow coming like the plane type. Flying me to realms, releasing this girl out her shell, and he came right through. It's so amazing what the God could do. He had me pick up the pen and write him a song about who it is I am and where I wanna go. Think about the blow. Make collabo music, baby boy, you game, then I choose it. Destiny unfold as the pen start to sway. I'm asking for truth when I pray. I'm glad that you look my way. No looking back but forward. You are the one for me, one for me, one for me.
Definition of L. I graduated from Hip Hop University.
Ready or not, I have arrived and I'm live. The first night that they took me to a party, I played kinda shy, it was killing me softly. Sparked that Bob Marley, wanted him to hold me the whole night and whisper in my ear, I'ma take you home tonight. Walk you to your door and kiss you goodnight and give you a tape you could listen to all all night. Maybe next week we could check the house party on the Ave, cross the path leading to the square where them b-boys and girls dance. I'm partly missing on your body. School first period, gotta turn off the audio. In the hallways, I am singing with your stereo. I got love for you, never wanna let you go. You got that sugar on the beat, it sweet me to the touch of the play and repeat. How could I forget such a sound so distinct? You make me wanna thinking, building, thinking. Maybe I could be the one to give birth to your children.
Definition of L. I graduated from Hip Hop University.
Ready or not, I have arrived and I'm live.
Had the hots from the day that I met him. I knew we had to marry, yo, I knew I had to get them. Always wrote them letters when he went away, abundant, I sent them. Every single day till he came back. Last message said I really want to be with you. I expressed how I felt for the past 2 years, and I knew you knew. We knew from the first night at the party. You my king and you made my heart rock. I love the sound of your name, Blue Boy. What's your name? What's your name? Yo, it's hip hop, it's hip hop, it's hip hop.